Okay, hey everyone. So, last week I told you that there would be a big video next week, and I asked you please watch that one. I don't know how many people heard that, it doesn't really matter. So, whether or not you heard, I am leaving the cubicle. I'm actually going to clean up the office tonight, some little bit tomorrow to clean up some more. I'm packing my stuff up, and I'm going to head back to Georgia. Um, so, this video, we're not going to talk about any of the circumstances of why I left. None of that. No one will ever know. Um, but this, I just want to talk about a lot of things. This is going to be a pretty long video, and I guess let's start off with the biggest thing. This is mostly going to be life advice, a bunch of cool stuff, like a bunch of really, really cool stuff. Phil approved it, and I'm finally going to let the world know a bunch of really cool things. But first, we're going to start off with Jabari. He used to work for the cubicle, and he taught me the most important thing, probably in the latter half of my life. And he didn't feel too good. He was pretty depressed, and he kept saying this one mantra over and over sometimes. For what? What's the point? For what? What's the point? And to him it was like, what's the point of living? This sucks. I'm sad. For what? What's the point? But for me, I interpreted it completely differently. For what? What's the point? Like, when we go through certain things in life, how often do we actually pause and say to ourselves, why am I doing this? What's the point of doing this? What is this for? We get so caught up in small things and we don't consider the big picture. And that one phrase taught me so much about just stop. What are you really doing with your life? What are your actions for? And what are you doing to change those things? And before I get too preachy, that's just what I learned, and it's going to be a recurring theme over and over and over. The next point I want to make is, as I'm going to leave, I'm going to come back to Georgia to become a software developer, and I also want to make guns. And people are like, oh, guns, that's evil, why would you do that? It's all about passion. Now I'm going to go back, this is going to be a long thing, but it's, when you're making guns, there's so much complexity and problem solving that goes into it. Let's say a 22 long rifle exerting 950 foot-pounds of bolt thrust. How are you counteracting that, and what is the time frame that you're going to do this on? The length of the barrel, the mass of the bolt, the balance of the bolt, weight of the hammer, spring. All of those components have to be balanced for a wide range, and you don't want to overbalance it. You want to get just the right amount so that it cycles through. And all of these problem-solving things, it's really difficult, but it's so satisfying, because when you solve it, everything that you imagined in your head is right there in your hands, and it actually works. And the moment that it works, you just get this feeling of satisfaction and knowing that you did that. That was the product of your own imagination. And I've actually done some pretty cool stuff. Like, I've made several semi-automatic weapons, all legally, no fully automatics, and I'll tell you straight up, making guns is actually easier than making cubes. We're going to talk about Luminox later. But yeah, that's pretty much what I want to do with my life. I watched this guy on YouTube who was like 17 or 19. He'd been making guns since he was 16, and he got his SOT, his Class 3 license, and it didn't even cost that much. He just had to play by the rules and go through a background check, talk to the DEA, and as long as you're a good guy and you're not doing bad things and you're incorporated, you can start this thing and really pull yourself up from the bootstraps. Like, one of the most inspirational stories that got to me was, there was a 17-year-old Korean boy, 17 years old, and in the early 90s, there was no good subcompact 9mm. And he said to himself, I like guns. And he designed a lug that was offset with a disc, with like the Browning locking system, on paper and pencil. And he said to himself, with this offset lug and this way of disconnecting the breech from the slide, you can make even smaller guns that are more accurate, handle recoil, and do all of these things. So he went ahead and he just did his drawings, learned how to mill, he made that gun. Now he's a multi-millionaire. He owns Desert Eagle, and everyone knows Desert Eagle. He owns the company and all of these brands, and it all started because he was 17 years old and he had a cool drawing of a gun. And it's those stories of just, if you can make this idea and then have the determination to make it real, you can make $1 million. And I said to myself, if it's fun and it's satisfying to figure out these problems, might as well get into it. And I'm going to do this in my spare time. And I'll run machines while the machines are at home doing the things. I'll be at work being a software developer. And it's just a fun life. And think about it this way. This isn't cubicle related. This is big picture related. If I were to make cube things for the next 5 years, my resume wouldn't change appreciably. But if I did software and actually applied my degree and I did computer things, all of those computer things lead to a higher ceiling that I can get in life. And that's just a fact. I'm not going to explain other facts, but you always have to think big picture. For what? What's the point? You have to consider the big picture in mind. On to cubing. The golden age is over. And for me, it was over quite a while ago. Now I'm going to tell my cubing story, guys. And this is when stuff's going to get pretty cool. I started in 2007, 13 years ago, almost. And I started, my first competition was in 2008. And back then, the vibe was completely different. Cubes, not just cubes, but people were different. And I had two main phases of cubing, and I've watched all of my heroes fade away twice. I've watched cubing change so much in all of these eras, and people will never understand what it was like back then. Can you believe that back then, the first competition I went to, people were adults in early and late teens, and the community was completely different. People talk about community, and the last competition I went to, they said they found their crowd, but I found and lost my crowd twice. And it's just been this growing sense of antisocialness because there are all of the people who are in their late 20s who still cube, there's so few of us. People from 2008, good luck finding them. And me, myself, I've always been weird. I can't even find friends in college. And it's difficult to find people that you vibe with. And I know I've vibed with a lot of people, but in this past year and a half, I've just become so insular and pretty much the only friend who, I can really just hang out with and just really say anything, do anything. It was Mikey. And big shout out to Mikey. But seeing all those cycles, it was rough. My favorite competition was 2016, Princeton. And just all of this backstabbing, all of these terrible circumstances, it grinds down on you over time. People just don't understand that. They don't see the big picture, and it's terrible. We're also stuck in a hardware bottleneck. Cubes, they haven't had big jumps in improvement in years. And after designing bunches of cubes that I haven't been able to show on camera, I'd like to say that unless there's some really big things that go on, we're not going to see a big jump in hardware anytime soon. And I'm not talking like magnets, I'm talking like the stalk under the centers disappearing, becoming standard, things like that. I've made some special things, I've transferred them to the company, but nothing was a big jump. Luminox, it's technically mine now, but we'll see where that goes. With time being so limited, and I'll still cube. I enjoy cubing. The act of cubing is different. We use cubing as this catch-all to encapsulate all of these things, but sometimes it lacks the words, the verbosity to explain all of what cubing is. I hope that my point got across. This is all on the fly. There's no script. There's never a script with me, you know. And getting back into cubing, Like, I don't want to tell too much of my boring story. It's the wonderment is gone. The reason I like guns so much is because there's so much problem solving. But these days, people get things handed to them. And I learned ZBLL back when I had to generate all of my algs twice. And there's so much figuring out. But now, the records are just so inconceivable. The competition is just so fierce. And like I said, all of my old heroes are gone. It's time to go to the way to the dinosaur as well. I'm still going to go to comps because I enjoy it, and I still want to get a sub 10 average. But that golden age, that spark, it's gone and it's never coming back. You can't roll back records. You can't roll back times. I remember when records, I was around before the first sub 10 single. And I remember when 13 average was the world record. And everyone in the community, we could see that, and it was still like, this is humanly conceivable by most of the people. Now, these days, most people cannot get the records, and I want to be straight up. Cubing is no longer beginner friendly. It's beginner friendly in some ways, but you're attracting a different crowd, and I can see that a lot of repeat people, the people that you might not even notice or see, but there's still people. They go to these comps once and they don't come back. These are real people that we don't even notice because, well, I noticed that you don't even notice because they don't come back and they have a quiet presence. And they're getting turned off because they don't get anything from it. We're starting to become really cliquish. And even for people like me who are in their late 20s, there's like no... I can't find other people like that. I don't have a place like other people have. So let's just try something new. So let's get down to my cubicle career. Everyone thinks of me as like, oh, he's the guy who made magnets. Don't remember me as the guy who made magnets. I'm gonna show you some videos about what I would prefer people remember me for. Now let's go back to 2016. I made the magnetic Fengyuan and I said this is good. But we go back to that first point I made. For what? What's the point? What's the point? You can make, some people are just making cubes that are gluing magnets in cubes, and they'll do a few a day. And then for what? What are you gonna do tomorrow? Make more? What's the point? But if you spend 3 days, maybe even a week, and make tools, machines, you spend a few days making machines, and then the next day, the machines and the tools make a lot more. How did Cubicle, in the midst of the magnetic cube craze where the companies weren't offering them, how did we meet demand with so few people? And I'm going to tell you how. So the first thing I did, I don't think I have videos of this, is just a simple clicky pushy thing that interfaced the inside of the Cubie and aligned that magnet perfectly with some glue. That was cool, but it was only a small increase in productivity. And I kept thinking to myself, I have to make more tools. And you might have noticed in my old videos, if you were around for back then, my printers were always running, but no one actually saw what I was printing. It was tools. And the Cubicle advantage was we had tools that put magnets into the cube in the same approximate location, plus minus half a millimeter, every single time. Repeatability, speed, and scale. So let's see, what's the first one I should show you? So here's an example of one tool that I made. It was a 2x2 thing, and you put magnets into it, and after you put magnets into it, you would just put it onto the 2x2 after you glued it, you would stamp all 6 sides, and you were done. That was a magnetic 2x2. So let's watch me do this. You put the 2x2 in.
You don't want to push down too hard. It'll jam if you push too hard.
However, I'm talking. This is me
we'll
from
talk about jamming later.
a few years ago.
Make sure that
he's gonna make the cube.
Fresh magnets specified for 2x2. So once you just put this in, you gently
I just
push
did a
down
whole
until you feel the
side. I just
click,
put
and then you
magnets
let
onto
go.
a whole side.
And then you will have put 4 magnets 4 pairs of magnets there.
And I'm
Once
going to
you
do
finish
that to
that
the rest.
face,
And you can see the speed at which I'm doing
Do
this.
the next face.
This
and then
is what I did, making
next
tools
face.
to make it more
Once you do
efficient in
3
the long
faces,
run.
You rotate
Why
this
would
way.
you spend your time making
Because
cubes
quarter rotations
just
are
a few a
faster
day
than
just to
double
do it the
rotations.
next day?
And just like
There's
that,
no point.
you have put
Just
all
like
the
that,
magnets
in a few
on the
seconds,
2 by 2
literally
cube.
seconds, I've put all the
And
magnets
just like
on a
I
2 by
showed
2.
you, it should.
That's the stuff that I want to be remembered for. Like, oh no, camera's weird. I'll leave it there. That tool could also be expanded to the GTS, the original, but in this time period it was after that. This is 2017. So let's see what's next. What about the act of actually gluing the magnets? You're going to need people to accurately put glue on magnets. But what if you took a machine, and this is one of my projects that I did. I took a 3D printer, modified it.
The magnets into the piece.
Oh, this is a magnet machine. You can see the
And it does
machine is
this
putting
rapidly.
magnets
Now,
into the cube.
A human would
And
have had to
you
do
can
this.
do this while loading the pieces,
And this
and the
saves
machine
the
just
wages
goes by
of a
itself.
human, so that a machine.
These
can
are
do
the things
job
that I worked
with
on,
no
because
human input.
why would you
that
bother
is our
working
project.
harder when you can work smarter and just use machines and technology? I coded this machine myself. I modified it. I hard coded these things, and a machine that does glue. But first, let's cover this. I also made a tool that can put magnets into a cube in 5 seconds.
That was
You
5
just twist
seconds?
the thing and it drops all the magnets into place.
And as you can see,
And I'll show you this.
all of these have a magnet each. Every single one of them.
Just like that. And it was a simple tool that could be used by anyone, and it was fast, it was efficient, and because of the magnets in place already inside that little board right there, it pulled them right into place, and it guaranteed anyone who bought a cubicle puzzle would have a puzzle that was accurate, consistent between batches, and the demand was pretty high back then because no companies were offering magnetic cubes, and we kept parity even with some of these companies after they released. How did we do that? It was through tools and our minds. And this is the machine
Press the button.
that glued.
So
You
while
can
it's
see the
working,
needle right there. This
The
needle.
important thing to know is parallel tasks. So
Yeah,
when one
so-
employee is doing one task, this will do another task. So no one is ever not doing something.
So
and
as
idle
I'm
time is
loading
reduced. So
one of
this is
these
the
boards up
dispenser.
and I'm putting magnets in,
it dispenses all the
the
magnets. in,
machine
like,
will
5
glue
seconds.
it. So one employee
Just
could
like that.
have the capacity
Now,
to do what
this board
3
is
would
completely
do.
done. So
Because
while
the
this
timing
board
was perfectly
is done,
concerted.
and we're gonna let the glue harden. We're gonna load another board.
And I'm going to skip
So-
ahead to the machine.
Just finished.
So yeah,
Person now.
right?
Precision accuracy are different.
You can see the
But
glue
You can see the globules of glue.
getting dispensed by this machine here.
It's a consistent one that's accurately placed every single time. Now,
And
as
this is
this
with
finishes up, we're
machine
gonna take it out,
accuracy. The
spray it with
machines
water,
will do
and
the
then
job
repeat.
for us.
And doing
So-
And
Now that
I programmed this machine. I put this together. I did the modifications. This is the stuff that I want to be This is what I want to be remembered for. Not just putting magnets into one cube. That's not a big deal. That was trivial. The real mental challenge was figuring out ways to do it more efficiently and faster. And that was fun. That was fun, and elements of that still exist. I'm always thinking of ways to make things easier, cheaper, and faster and better. But you can only go so far. And if I could somehow come up with a new gun discovery or a software thing, that would be just amazing for me. So I think that's where I'm headed with life. And if I still have cube stuff, I'll post videos, but that's it, guys. I think I'm done being professional, and I'm gonna go back just being another person. And if you're watching this far, I don't know how long this video is. Thank you so much. And keep watching my videos if you like inventions, firearms, computers, and I'll have cube videos every now and then, but independent cube videos. So, thank you so much, everyone, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.